What would it be like if toys had emotions? What would it be like if cars had emotions? What would it be like if monsters had emotions? What would it be like if emotions had emotions?
Yeah.
It's basically Inside Out.
Welcome to Popcorn Parenting, a podcast about movies, mythology, and the Messiah, or in the case of today's episode, high levels of sass, bing bong, and surprised by sadness. Okay, they don't begin with the same letter, but they are intriguing nonetheless. My name is James Cary. I am a comedy writer for the BBC here in the UK, and I am thrilled to say, with me in person, in the room, is reformed mythologist Nate Morgan Locke. Hello, Nate.
Hello, it is so nice to see you.
I am literally looking into your eyes without the need of Zoom.
It's incredible.
It's incredible. So we are today...
Well, hold on, just let me, before we get going on to that, because it's a special occasion, I've got you a little gift.
What?
I brought you a present because I thought you should have something that reminds you of popcorn parenting.
Okay.
In this little office studio you've got here. So I brought you, and you get a choice, right?
Okay.
You either have little 3-inch figurine of Mike Wazowski,
Yeah.
or you can have his best friend in the world, James P. Sullivan. So
Easy.
one will stay with you, and the other will come with me
Oh.
to wherever I record future episodes.
It's gotta be Wazowski.
Well, there you go, brother.
Because also, he is Billy Crystal, who I could listen to I could read him read the phone book.
So there we go.
There we
You've
go.
now got a little thing.
Excellent. I'm going to put him up there on the shelf, so he'll be in all of my podcast recordings.
There you go.
In the background, and he's there waving. Well, that's very exciting. And so these made it back from America, but presumably some toys were left behind, and I presume there were tears, including from your kids, but probably
That's
mostly
right.
from you.
A lot from me. Most of the toys I've accumulated are small enough to be kind of secreted away in the hand luggage, so that was the thing. But yeah, we left toys behind. We went through the great emotional stress of moving home.
Oh, well, in the meantime, let's take our mind off things with a movie. We are talking about the 2015 Pixar movie, Inside Out, directed by Pete Docter, featuring the vocal stylings of Amy Poehler, Phyllis Smith, Richard Kind, Lewis Black, Bill Hader, and Mindy Kaling. It cost $175 million. It took, at the box office, in the days when you could go to the cinema, $850 million. So they did okay. And at the Oscars, it was nominated for Best Original Screenplay in the Grown-Ups section. And it won Best Animated Feature. Of course it is. Of course it did. It's a Pixar movie. It's going to win Best Animated Feature. They don't even need to watch it to give it that. Now, little spoiler here. I didn't like it.
You did not care for Inside Out.
I did not care for Inside Out. And I was surprised because I'd heard only good things about it. And so there was stuff that didn't work for me. It didn't make me feel like Soul, which made me cross. Yeah. But we can get into that. But that's not so important.
Well, I want to drill into it. I want to find out what it was, what you struggled with, or what you felt it was missing, or what was overdone, because it's such a family favourite for us.
Right.
So I'm sort of
I've really rained on the Morgan Locke parade has been rained on.
Yeah, my daughter was very, very excited when she said, "Oh, you're doing Inside Out today," and I saw you sort of slightly wince over the breakfast table.
Okay, I'm going to disappoint some people. So I think I was surprised that this wasn't a no-brainer because I'd heard so much about it, and I settled down to watch it, and I was like, oh, this isn't as good as I was hoping. And I think there are two things really. One is I didn't like what I didn't like about Soul, which was just the constant exposition of the rules. Now we have to go there and do this, and now we have to do there. Right. And now this thing is falling apart, and therefore we have to fix this. And they were kind of making it up as they went along. And I think that's unusually poor storytelling from Pixar. So that was frustrating. The other thing was I just felt like there was one positive emotion, joy, and all of the others were rather negative. So it was anger, sadness, fear,
disgust.
And I just thought, I don't think that's the sum total of human emotions. But then again, it's a movie, so it's never going to be. So I didn't quite buy the mechanics. But having said that, there was a lot to like, and I think Amy Poehler did a great job.
Well, she's just so charming. Because I take the point on the Exposition Fest. It is just, explanation after explanation. And I think it's tricky because obviously Pixar have these, big ideas that they were trying to communicate, but also a commitment not to leave things too ambiguously. So they want to tie everything up, and so they do end up explaining things to a level that might be a bit tedious occasionally. But I just think Amy Poehler is so charming in it, and the story, I think once you're into it, and maybe it's just a repeat viewing sort of thing, these films, grow and grow on you, or certainly this one did for us. Now, interestingly, you mentioned Soul. When we watched Soul, I didn't like Soul so much. I had to then go and watch Inside Out to bring myself back.
Okay.
Put myself back on track, was to go, no, Pixar can do this better. So that's why I was a bit surprised when you said...
It is better. Inside Out is better than Soul, yeah, but I would have gone to Toy Story 2 as my happy place.
I think just because it with the conceptual level of it, right? Because it's trying to deal with what does it mean to be a human being in a very literal, on-the-nose way. So, that description of Pixar films of, what would it be like if toys had emotions? What would it be like if cars had emotions? What would it be like if monsters had emotions? What would it be like if emotions had emotions?
Yeah.
It's basically Inside Out. And I think that's where it's really bold to tackle that, and to be able to tackle that in a very commercially successful way.
Let's start with high levels of sass.
Okay. So with the high levels of sass, do you remember that there's a scene when they're sitting around the dinner table? It's where you first get to see inside the mum's head and the dad's head as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So part of the reason I think this is a important scene, or a interesting scene, is because you're not only dealing with, these emotions of Riley's that you've seen played out from the beginning of the film, you're also seeing inside the mum's head and seeing inside the dad's head. And Lily noticed, or my daughter noticed, that while Joy is kind of the boss inside Riley's head, did you notice what emotion is in charge in the mum's head?
I didn't notice, but it was different. It was very different.
It's sadness. Oh. And so my daughter just went, hold on, why is Joy in charge for Riley, but then sadness is in charge for Mum? And then for Dad, it's anger who's in charge. So that raises all sorts of questions about, okay, if these are the, I think Pixar did their homework on, the study into human emotion and various psychological theories.
And let's be honest, gender. Turns out men and women are different, but that's one for another podcast.
But I think interesting to say, was it always the case that Riley's mum had sadness as her first and primary emotion?
Okay.
Or was there this process that took place where, joy was the start for all people, and then they move into these other emotional kind of dominance, other emotions become rise to the fore. And, that being the case for the dad as well. So I found that was just an interesting idea, that it was my daughter who picked up on it. So I hadn't noticed. She had realised that this was different. And that opened up some questions about, people and are we all going to be the same? Is joy going to be the first emotion for every person?
Right.
All that sort of stuff. But then the other thing, which is very funny, is that in that scene, I think joy and sadness are both outside of headquarters at that stage. And so Riley's only possible emotions are anger, fear, or disgust. And so she's having dinner and she's being kind of, non-committal grunting. She's sort of not and at one point she rolls her eyes. And inside the dad's head, it's like, still reporting high levels of sass.
Oh, yeah.
And for parents who, you've sat around the dinner table and you're trying to have a nice conversation, and one of your kids is being, stroppy and difficult, And as parents, you're trying to work out how do we now respond to this? Do we need to, kind of deal with it in a really upfront way? Or do we need to provide other avenues for conversation? Do we need to sort of be, sort of keep it light and try and just get through the meal? And so there's a brilliant moment when the dad is going to move to like DEFCON.
Yeah.
5. Does it go up or down?
Can't remember. Yeah.
Anyway, and so it's like the foot will go down. The foot will go, and it's like the foot is down, and then everyone in the dad's head, they all relax back, and they're like, "Well, that could have been a disaster," and then the mom's head is like, "Well, that was a disaster," and it was just the parental kind of issues around dealing with a child and what you're expecting from your spouse and how you're supposed to kind of deal with this without
but interestingly
saying anything.
Yeah. Interesting how A, traditional the gender roles were.
Totally, yeah.
And B, interesting how I was quite surprised at how conservative the parenting was. That they weren't trying to cheer her up at dinner. Yeah,
and it's interesting, and maybe part of the reason I like it as well is because Riley and her parents do have a very sweet family relationship.
Yeah.
The fact that she's sent to a room for rolling her eyes and for sort of, chatting back, as it were, does feel like, oh, that's a kind of vindication of the approach we've taken in terms of how tone of voice and the way you show respect to people and how you're, the way you speak to people is important. And what's difficult is that I'm aware of my kids finding a lot of enjoyment and a lot of TV that they will watch or will want to watch lets that stuff slide. And so we call it eye roll TV. It's like you can only watch one episode of Disney Channel eye roll TV because when you come out of that, your tone of voice is different. Your everything's got to have a kind of,
sass.
High levels of sass. And so as a parenting opening the blinds and saying, look, this is the way we're trying to parent you. These are behaviors that we take issue with in the way that you speak to people and the way that you speak to us. And we want you to be aware of that. We want to know you to recognize when you're behaving in these particular ways. And to see how kind of ugly it looks when it happens. So again, we've said this series is a bit more focused on parenting and parenting particularly. And I think this movie and that scene is very interesting from a, what are you going to do with your kids when they're being stroppy at the dinner table? That's a really great way of illustrating how it can go and how it can go wrong and how people have got different expectations. So the fact that your children watching that become aware of it can then...
that's a conversation.
Yeah.
How can we initiate that conversation? We've watched the movie. We've maybe watched it a couple of times over a few weeks. Maybe we're in the car. What are some questions beyond what's your favourite bit? What did you like? What didn't you like? How did she relate to her parents? What went right? What went wrong?
Well, I suppose the conversation we actually had about that was, do you think that your primary emotion, the thing that characterizes you would be joy or fear or anger or sadness? And do you think that's true for everybody? Do you think we all do have, different mixture of dominant emotions? And what do you think leads to that? Why do people react in different ways at different times? Why was Riley behaving in that way? And was that odd for her parents? And so I think you then get into a conversation about personalities.
I guess the other question is whether to bring discipleship into it. I don't know if you've got that coming up, but I guess we as Christians might want to push back on the fact that you are at the mercy of your emotions.
Yes.
So we want to own the fact that our emotions are really powerful, but that you don't need to. So she behaves in the way she does because she literally cannot experience joy.
Yeah.
To which we would say, if you're a Christian, that shouldn't be true. It may medically be true at some point because of the way your brains work. And, I'm not a neuroscientist.
Yeah.
Which may be surprising to some people listening to this podcast. And I'm pretty sure you're not either.
Not last time I checked.
No. They don't dish those out like seminary degrees. That's a conversation worth having too.
What's interesting with the discipleship is that you've got so many places you can go to in Scripture which talk about people's emotion and talk. In your anger, do not sin.
Yeah.
Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. What is it if anger is in charge, if anger is dominant, what is around? Well, the devil's around prowling like a lion looking for people to devour. So we've got a very easy access point to say, is it right to just say my emotions rule the day, or is there something else in charge? And this raises the massive questions of, hold on, if Riley's emotions are running things, why are things not going the way that they want them to go? So they're not in charge at all. They don't actually have control over Riley in any way, shape or form. She's at the mercy of the circumstances.
Yeah.
And so that raises all sorts of issues for us, and I don't know how non-Christian parents can comfort their children because, well, I don't know how they do. Okay, yeah. They obviously do. They obviously do it all the time.
Everything's going to be all right.
But what is it you're appealing to which makes everything going to be all right? Yeah. Because all you can really get from the film is it works out okay in the end. It's just part of growing up.
It's just a phase.
We're all not really in control of anything.
Yeah.
You think, well, that's not reassuring. Really.
They managed to not have any part of the movie which was the word hormones.
Well, there is a brilliant bit at the end when it says get the puberty. New panel.
What's that? It's probably not important.
That's a good
sell. And I think for me, you would also want to go to the Lord's Prayer. Give us our daily bread. This is a daily prayer. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. It's like, you need to talk about this. Don't let the sun go down in your anger.
Yeah.
But if your kids already know the Lord's Prayer, they already know the answer, if that makes sense. So maybe that's a place to go. Let's move on to Bing Bong.
Bing Bong. So you remember who Bing Bong is? I just realised we didn't do it in a world. It's pretty obvious in a world. It's about the most obvious in a world. The young girl moves from Minnesota to San Francisco with her mum and dad.
For her dad's non-specific, stressful business.
Somehow tech job, something.
Yeah.
And she basically finds it really difficult. And the great news for us as the audience is that we get to see inside her head and see her emotions trying to kind of stabilize or manage this transition. But Bing Bong, sorry.
So Bing Bong is the imaginary friend?
So yeah, Bing Bong is the imaginary friend played by...
Richard Kind.
Richard Kind, that's it. So he is this kind of weird dolphin, elephant, hippo thing. And he has a little trailer, and he when he cries sweets. And
there's a lovely moment where he is literally crying, and these sweets kind of goes, "Oh yeah, I cry candy. Try the salted caramel," or something like that. He sort of suggests one, doesn't he?
Yeah. And he's really interesting because within the film, he acts as a kind of he's a forgotten childhood friend. He's a forgotten imaginary friend. He can guide joy and sadness around the subconscious in various ways because he understands the shortcuts and stuff. There's a very good joke where they sort of say, that's cognitive thought, that's linguistics, there's deja vu, there's cognitive thought, there's deja vu. It's like just such a nice little kind of joke. And then facts and opinions are in two different boxes.
Yeah, there's a nice little joke. Yeah, they look so similar.
They do, don't they? So there's just some really nice bits with Bing Bong. But I think what is really great about Bing Bong as a character is that he is the one who has to die to save the day. Joy is right down in the pit where all the faded memories go to eventually be expunged from Riley's.
Yeah, they sort of slowly, occasionally burst into
self.
flames, and yeah.
And she's down there. She's trying to get the core memories back to headquarters, and there's absolutely no hope. And so Bing Bong says, "Hold on, my ship can fly if we sing the song." And so they attempt it. They miss the peak and getting out of this sort of pit. They miss it, and they try again, and they miss it. And there's just this very beautiful moment where he realizes that the power to keep this rocket ship moving is provided by him singing, but his own weight is what's dragging them back. So if they're going to make it through the peak, he has to let go and let Joy keep ascending. So it's probably one of the clearest examples of sacrificial death or personal sacrifice, giving one's own life for the salvation of another, that you find in Pixar. And there's something very interesting about what that says about child development and about human development, that there are parts of us, I think the film is saying, that need to die for us to grow into the new stage of life. And isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting that we seem to recognize a gospel pattern of death and new life just in the very process of growing up? And so I think, I mean, it's probably the saddest, most sort of sweet point in the film is when Bing Bong just falls back, and Joy is like still going, "Who's your friend? Let's play!" Yeah. And then you hear as well that the music of the song is then overlaid with the music of just the sadness of him dying, basically. Yeah. I think it's a really poignant, one of the most poignant moments in all of Pixar, for someone to say, because I love you so much, I will give my life to keep you going. So yeah, I think that bit is really fun, and well, not really fun, but really sweet, and
yeah. So I think we're happy with Bing Bong. We'll move on to our final, Surprised by Sadness.
Inside Out could only have been made by very comfortable people living in and around California, because the problem is you don't know how to integrate sadness into a world dominated by joy, right?
First world problems.
So I was imagining, what would Inside Out have looked like had it been written by a Russian novelist, right? It basically would have been sadness. Sadness rules the root. There's only ever sadness, just misery and sadness. And it's always like, but is there any place for joy? It's like, I don't think so. Joy, stay in this little box because you can't be trusted.
Joy sat in the corner, flipping through sadness. Many magazines, going, just yell when you need me. Sure thing, Joy.
That's it. So basically,
I think we're good for now, Joy.
The
I think
Russian
we're good.
version is what I would sort of like to see, because no one in, was it 18th century Russia is going to be sort of saying, oh yeah, the thing we need to teach our children is that sometimes it's okay to be sad. And as parents, we've, overemphasized the need to constantly be happy all the time.
But the reality is, even for the majority of people watching this movie in the developed world, at least as we're calling it, I don't know what we call it now, what we call the West, but in the West, where we now have too much food, not enough food. We don't really have child mortality in anything like the rate we did. We have a high life expectancy.
But we that's chosen by the parents before the child's born.
Yes,
Our child mortality rates are still very high. It's just that...
Okay, I'll give you that. That's one for a Speak Life podcast or something else. But in a way, this is the world that we live in, which is the world of California, because either we live in California or we want to.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to, but in a way, we want to live in a Pixar movie more than we want to live anywhere else, probably. So in a way, this is kind of, sadness is a problem.
Yeah.
And therefore, this pandemic has been very unwelcome, really, because it's brought sadness and restriction. And we now worship at the shrine of safetyism, as
Yeah.
I think they call it,
Yeah.
so that there's no sadness.
Yeah.
Say safety first. You can't be too careful.
Yeah.
To which I would always say, yes, you can.
Safety first, maybe safety third. Let's
Yeah.
try safety third. Let's try enjoying things and caring for one another. What I think is interesting from Pixar is that they are pretty actively confronting the, just everyone be happy all the time with this film. So the biggest problem in Riley's life is not that her parents have moved her from her comfortable life in Minnesota where she was playing ice hockey to now living in San Francisco where they put broccoli on pizza. Congratulations, San Francisco! You ruined pizza! First the Hawaiians and now you. This is such a brilliant line. But the biggest problem in Riley's life is actually that her parents have burdened her with this pressure to be their happy little girl. So Riley's not allowed to be sad because her parents have said, sadness has no place in your life. You're a precious little girl. You're an only child. You're going to be, everything's going to be always great and wonderful. And Riley now has to deal with the fact that no, life sucks a lot of the time. And I don't feel that I am enabled to enjoy or to appreciate the sadness of life, and therefore can't actually move on. I'll be stunted emotionally forever because I'm now got to just conceal everything and seize up.
And maybe that's at the heart of an awful lot of the anxiety that we're being told is a reality.
Yeah.
Is that you've got kids who are thinking, I'm meant to be happy, but being a grown-up doesn't look very happy. I'm quite anxious about that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a subconscious thing in that sense, because adult life does seem to be pretty stressful and miserable. And you have to go and work a job that you don't particularly want to do, or you have to deal with aging, dying parents, or you have to, deal with stuff that you don't like. So, and adults seem pretty stressed and angry a lot of the time. And that's going back to looking inside their heads. One, mum is sad, dad is angry.
Yeah. And the issue for Riley is that her parents have said thank you so much, because all the way through this difficult process where where they've lost luggage and she's sleeping on the floor and stuff, the furniture hasn't arrived, and she's never been allowed to embrace the fact that this sucks and that it's not going well. And it's actually a mercy to tell someone it's okay for you to be sad about this. So one of the reasons why I think Inside Out has a big impact for us is because obviously we moved from a very comfortable life in Bath with lots and lots of friends for everybody. We're all doing very nicely, not too far from right here, where we are now. But we were very, very enjoying our lives, and then I ripped the family out of that to go and move to the States. And then 4 years later, after we got very comfortable, great bunch of friends, wonderful street to play in, all of that stability, we're now moving again. And one of the things we said to our kids when we said we're going to move home or move back to the UK is you don't have to be especially happy about this. And the fact that you're sad about it is actually a good thing, because it means that God has provided all that you've asked for when we first moved here. He's provided us with a church family. He's given us friends. He's given us great relationships, people that we love, and a community that we really enjoy being part of. It would be weird if we weren't sad. In fact, if we were really happy, like, oh, great, we finally get to leave this place.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you've really hated the last 4 years.
So long, suckers.
So I think from that point of view, I feel sort of our decisions as a family, the things that I've put my kids through, they're not in any way disastrous. They've not experienced, mercifully the death of loved ones. But this is as close to grief as they'll get. They didn't just have one person, die in the family. They've been taken out twice now of two really loving communities, and helping them to deal with their emotions in before the face of God in this has been has been huge, and we're still doing it. Yeah, we only moved back 10 days ago.
So again, you don't need to look very far in your Bibles to take your kids to passages which show this is what the life of a disciple looks like. It's hard. It's disciple. It's discipline. And life itself is hard, and people die, and people are sick, and Jesus doesn't promise happiness. Certainly not happiness now. He promises joy and contentment. Sometimes now, and he promises eternity with him when all the bad things will be wiped away. So there's some potential grown-up conversations there.
But I feel it's like the Pilgrim's Progress of Pixar movies. Like, what's this character called? Joy. Oh, okay. I wonder what she's like. Oh, sadness. Oh, I wonder what that's like. So it's very kind of explanatory and expositional, as you sort of mentioned. But I think, if someone else has done a feature-length animated film for a family to watch on a Christian way of understanding emotions, which works as well as this one, I will be first in line to go and see it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how likely it is that's happened.
In the short term, extremely unlikely.
Yeah.
Reference there to Pilgrim's Progress and my dislike of it. There are 3 chapters on that in my new book, The Gospel According to a Sitcom Writer, which if you're in the UK, you can buy from me personally, and it's published by SBCK in the UK and IVP in the US. So if you're listening over there, then you can get a hold of it through the interwebs. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So I explained that I don't like Pilgrim's Progress because there is literally no subtext, and that makes it poor writing as far as I'm concerned, even though it is one of the best-selling books in human history. So far be it for me to explain why no one likes Pilgrim's Progress, because it seems that I'm the only person that doesn't. So well, I think we've probably sucked the juice out of that, Inside Out. I think we should probably wrap things up. Lots to talk about with your kids. I mean, we've got 3 whole different things about imaginary friends. We've got stuff about sadness. It's okay to be sad. That's actually how you grow. And then, the sassiness and the parenting and that kind of business too. So great. Well, thanks very much for listening, everyone. And we will be back again with another one sometime, hopefully very soon. Cheers, Nate.
It's great to be in the room with you.
Oh, and it's great to have you back in the United Kingdom. And we will speak to you next time. Cheerio.
Cheery bye.
You can turn off the episode now without judgment, or you can listen for a few more minutes when Nate and I talked about how the shot is composed, how everything means something, and how those 5 stones that David picked from the river to kill Goliath have a certain meaning as well. So if you want to catch up with some of that, listen on for a few more minutes.
I don't know if we talked about poster or just shouting poster during movies before. I don't think
so.
So it's the thing that we started doing as a family when we're watching a movie is usually it's like the massive grand wide shot with the central character in the middle, looking over some mountain range or something like that. Yeah. And I don't remember what the first film we did it with was, but certainly Inside Out was one of them, where you just shout poster because that's the poster you want to put on the screen. And it's not connected to the stories necessarily. It's not connected so much to the film, but in terms of training my kids to watch a movie and to see what's being done and how it's being sort of assembled and how
that's cinematography, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's a really fun little thing. So maybe people would want to start looking for those within their favourite films. If you had to pick a movie poster for this, what would it be? And it's got to somehow represent the hero in front of the challenge sort of thing. And so there's some nice bits, and one of them is, as I say, just at that point when Bing Bong has dropped off the back of the rocket.
Yeah. And everything, it's what they call, I believe, or used to, the mise en scène, which is the composition of the shot. And therefore, if you're only shooting, if it's live action, you're only shooting 4 minutes of movie a day. Yeah. And therefore, every shot is composed and every single thing that you can see has been put there. Yeah. And therefore, it's all deliberate. And I think I'm really realising quite how much we obsess over television and what stuff means, but we don't actually do that with the Bible.
You're
So,
right. Yeah.
Even though we're told very few details about most of the Bible stories, we just go, oh, it's probably not important. Yeah, there were 7. That probably doesn't mean anything. Yeah, this happened or that. Oh, yeah, he was tending sheep. I mean, but it was an agrarian society, wasn't it? So
obviously,
it's probably nothing in that. And the Ark of the Covenant was carved with this and that, and leaves, because leaves are nice. It's like, whatever. It's like,
they look good,
it's so. I think that kind of composition, and so in a way, you can look at the Bible and shout poster.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really helpful point to say. It's there for a purpose. It's there for a reason. It's not accidental. And obviously, that's the case with animation. Because literally you don't have anything to shoot.
Yeah. There's nothing left. There's no residual left over from, we've got this location, this looks okay, we'll dress it. Yeah. But we can't move that and we can't move that, so we'll shoot around it.
So they build the world that they want to build, and every frame can have in it only what they want to show you. And, if we believe that about a filmmaker, we should believe that about, scripture. And there's a very interesting thing. You've read Augustine's sort of his take on the Good Samaritan?
Okay.
Where he goes into sort of minute detail about what each of the parts of Jesus' parable mean. And so, like the coins that the Samaritan gives
Silver coins,
are, I think, the Old and New Testaments or something.
Okay,
and then the Apostle Paul is the innkeeper and all this sort of stuff.
So I can't quite go with that.
So, what's interesting is he takes seriously the fact that Jesus didn't have to include any of those details in the parable.
Yeah.
So that all the details are there because Jesus wanted them to be there. And so, yes, you could go too far and, not understand what's going on with them. But you've got to take it seriously.
Yeah.
Why does he say 2 coins rather than 1 coin? Well, maybe it cost more, or it was showing the generosity of that. Okay, well, why 2, not 3, or whatever. And so you've got legitimate questions you can ask of the text that you can... that need to be answered by somebody.
Yeah. So that's probably overdoing it in the sense of the other version, the other Bible situation. That is when David picks up the stones from the river.
Oh, the 5
stones. Yeah, and these represent this, and this. Is like no, you've literally made that up. But 5 is significant, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I don't know what that is.
I think it's supposed to be the number of grace, isn't it? 5 is
is
typically understood as the number of grace.
Okay. Great. I'm happy to go with that. But
because you get 3 is the Trinity, 4 is creation, and 5 is then grace.
Okay.
Anyway.
That's helpful. That's good. But it's like
4 is 3 plus 1. So that's
5,
the thing you get into.
Yeah. But 5 is not an accident.
Yeah.
There were just 5 in case he missed with the first 4.
Yeah.
It's like okay, that's probably not just that.
Okay.
But so in a way, I'm just advocating. Just flipping it over a bit and then reading the Bible as if it's a Pixar movie where everything is there for a reason.
Yeah.
And we seem oddly fine with the fact that the Bible is full of details that are probably, that's just what happened. They're just describing what happened.
Yeah.
As if God also wasn't the sovereign ordainer of all things.
Yeah.
There were just these water jars at that wedding in Cana. I mean, they were just sort of there. What, purification jars at the wedding?
Yeah.
Okay. They were just there. That doesn't mean anything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway. Poster!
I love how we got from poster to mise en scène to numerology and back again.
And that's why people listen to Popcorn Parenting, but probably don't share it with their friends.
You should. You really should.
You really should. Give your friends the gift of Popcorn Parenting and say to them very much, you are so welcome.